Hello and welcome live from Tehran. You've tuned into Press TV's World News. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Marzieh Hashemi. Well, dozens of people have staged a demonstration outside the American embassy in the Lebanese capital of Beirut. Well, protesters slammed what they described as Washington's role in worsening Lebanon's economic crisis. They urged the United States to stop interference in the internal affairs of Lebanon. Well, protesters burned American and Israeli flags. The protest came in response to recent remarks by former U.S. Ambassador to Lebanon, Jeffrey Feltman. He's told the U.S. House that the recent demonstrations in Lebanon and the austerity reaction to them coincide with American interests. Those demonstrations have been ongoing for more than a month now against corruption and economic conditions. Well, to look more at this, we're going to cross over to Beirut. Press TV's correspondent Mariam Saleh there. Mariam, thanks so much for being with us. Also out of Toronto, we have author and journalist Eric Wahlberg. Thank you so much, both of you. Well, starting off with Mariam now. Mariam, fill us in on the latest. What exactly does this mean, what we're hearing from Feltman and reaction that you're seeing about this inside of Lebanon?
Well, of course, for decades now, people in Lebanon have been angered at the direct U.S. role inside Lebanon. And this is not something that's a secret. We see U.S. officials meeting with Lebanese officials, in addition to meeting with those political parties that they strongly support inside Lebanon. Before, in 2005, it was the March 14th movement. Later on, it was more the groups like the Future movement led by Saad Hariri, the Lebanese Forces group led by Samir Jaja, people like the Druze leader Walid Jumblat, and all these groups that came out of being the main warlords in the civil war, in addition to the Phalangist party by the Gemayel family. So it's very clear that the U.S. wants to keep to its sort of power that it has over these groups, and to continue with that, if we may say that, pushing or provocation that is happening against a huge portion of people, always describing Hezbollah as a terrorist movement, the resistance movement as a terrorist movement, describing the supporters of Hezbollah as being blinded. And of course, this is something that Lebanese people, no matter what their sect is, whether they are Christian, whether they are Muslim, whether they were under Israeli occupation and fought for years to liberate their land, or whether they were just people who were supporting those people who were fighting for their to liberate their lands, all understand that this is unacceptable. And what we heard from former U.S. ambassador to Lebanon and a former U.S. Undersecretary, Mr. Feltman, was something that was, we can say, the peak of U.S. intervention inside Lebanon, and this is unacceptable. This is not considered something that any Lebanese, I think, would accept. Even those who are supporters of the U.S. cannot openly say that they are with, especially when he spoke of issues related to Lebanon's oil fields. Everybody knows that Lebanon is about very soon will be one of the countries that will be drilling its own natural resources in its economic waters, perhaps for the first time in its history. And the Israelis are eyeing, of course, several of the blocks in that economic waters. The U.S. officials have been trying to get some concessions from the Lebanese officials. The Lebanese officials are firmly standing and sticking to their viewpoint, saying that no, the UN, of course, considers that this is Lebanese waters, so it will be Lebanese waters, and we will drill in that area.
Okay,
I think people's reaction is only natural.
Let me get Eric in on this conversation. Eric, your take, it seems, whether we look at Lebanon or we're looking at Iraq or Iran or so many other places these days, so we seem to see more and more American officials basically almost saying what they are doing. At one point in time, before American officials would trying to hide their involvement in trying to destabilize the governments. But it seems as if, I'm not sure exactly why, I want your perspective now, but they just basically say, just like Feldman said this in the case of Lebanon, and we've had others say that dealing with other countries, why is it the case now that basically these American officials say that what they are trying to do?
Lebanon really is a kind of petri dish, I would say, for the future of the Middle East. It's because it's got a long tradition of independence right from 1943 during the World War II, when the independence was forced on the French. They have always been a bit different than the other countries. And the fact that all sectors are coming together and that they resist the U.S. Even those that might like the West are still quiet. They know that they can't broadcast their pro-American stance. And at the same time, the U.S. is pressuring intensely. There is $100 million of aid that was approved by Congress months ago, and Trump has been holding it up. And if you look at whose interest that is, it's clearly Israel. Trump is following an Israeli agenda, and Feldman is part of that Zionist American leadership that wants to try and undermine the independence of Lebanon. And so it's an exciting moment. The young people, I read in Al Jazeera that they actually formed people's brigades to walk. So it's like a people's army that is part of the real nation. So it's very exciting. And also this, why did the Americans stop the aid? It's a kind of blackmail. Get rid of Hezbollah. That's what they're trying to say. And that's crazy that you can't interfere that way. And Hezbollah is part of the resistance against Israel. And the Lebanese army and Hezbollah work side by side. They're not conflicting, and this is an important fact that there is a unity in the country, and it shows the way forward for the Middle East is a strong resistance against Israel, be aware of America's interference, and protect your natural resources. That's wonderful that they're going ahead independently, and I'm sure that they're going to be very careful about who gets the rights to their oil.
Well, Mariam, how are you gauging this situation? Now, this has been going on for a while now in Lebanon, these protests. Now, do you see more unity? Is there more structure in the goals, or no? Do you just see it as somewhat of a chaotic situation? Tell me how you're gauging it, because you're on the streets every day talking to the people.
Yes, it is. It's quite complex. It's quite obscure because when you talk to the people from different areas and different protests, you have different takes because you have some areas of those people who are mainly the leftists, mainly those who are academics. They want something that is structured, and what they want to see is they want to see something from the judicial system. They want to see the corrupt politicians being taken to court. They want to see accountability, real accountability. You have on the other side some sides in Lebanon, and this is quite ironic, and I think you might find it, a lot of people don't understand what's happening, that many of those who are warlords, many of those who are mainly accused of being corrupt, and they're clear evident suspects of being corrupt politicians, are framing themselves, putting themselves in light of being those with the revolution. They are the ones who are walking the streets with those people. They are saying we are with those because they want to see this people protest, this popular protest that are very significant, because it's about time that Lebanon is free of corruption. It's about time that Lebanon works towards that path, but they want to take it to another path, which is being antagonistic towards another portion of Lebanese people who are with the resistance. They are with liberating Lebanese land. They are with Lebanon's sovereignty against Israeli occupation, Israeli threats, and U.S. dictatorship. States. So this is why all these issues play out. But it's not very structured right now, still, the protests. And even those who are with the resistance, let's say, and they are against clearly any sort of civil strife, what they want to see now is they want to see the government working. So what everybody's waiting for, and the problem with the complexities, and you have one of those, the politicians, for example, like head of the Future Movement, for instance, Saad Hariri, caretaker prime minister, he is not conceding, he is not cooperating with the other groups in order to form a cabinet that is accepted by all of the Lebanese. So this is something that the Lebanese are waiting for, and this is something that would be a very significant step if we have an acceptable prime minister with a cabinet that is willing to really work and take courageous measures and decisions.
All right, and on that note, I'd like to thank both of you for being with us. Press TV's very own Mariam Saleh out of Beirut, and Eric Wahlberg, author and journalist out of Toronto. And thank you so much, viewers, for staying with us with the news. Stay with us. We take a short break, and we'll be back right after this.